In a previous video we talked about how to add real numbers. Today we're going to be talking about what to do when we want to subtract the real numbers, and there's just a main idea that we need to remember, and that's the fact that today we're going to be adding the opposite. So what does that mean exactly? We have 3 steps to follow. Step number 1, we're going to be changing the subtraction in the problem to addition. After we've done that, we'll go on to step number 2, where we change the sign of the second number. So if our second number is positive, then we're going to change it to a negative number, and vice versa. If we start out with a negative number for our second number, we're going to change it to a positive number. And then step 3, we'll just have to recall those addition rules that we did in our last video and follow those. With these things in mind, let's go ahead and look at our first examples here. Alright, so we're going to be simplifying these expressions. We are subtracting real numbers, and we have our steps over here to the side. So if I look over here, step 1 says we're going to be changing the subtraction sign to addition. So over here, instead of thinking about this as negative 6 minus 2, I'm going to think about it as negative 6 plus 2. Okay? After I've done that, now step 2 says to change the sign of the second number. So since 2 is positive, I want to make it turn into a negative. And I'll use some parentheses here to help me kind of distinguish between my positive and negative. And then after that, we're following the rules of addition. Now, rules of addition are talking about signs. If our signs are the same, like we have a negative and a negative, we're supposed to add these two numbers together. 6 plus 2 is 8. And then we are taking the sign of the bigger number according to the kindergartner. 6 is the bigger number of these two, and since 6 is negative, my answer is also going to be negative. So our answer for this first one is going to be negative 8. Same idea for our next example. I'm going to write 8, but instead of writing minus, I'm going to write plus negative 4. And step 2 says to change the sign of the second number, so my negative 4 will turn into a positive 4. And then lastly, we are going to be following addition rules. Now this time I have two of the same signs again, positive and positive, so we add them. 8 plus 4, that's 12. Since 8 is the bigger number and 8 is positive, answer will also be positive. Okay. Our third example, same steps, we're just using them with fractions this time. So I look up down here, I'm going to write out negative 8 over 9 plus negative 5 over 6. There's our step 1, change subtraction to addition. Next I'm going to change the sign of the second number. So my negative 5/6 is instantaneously a positive 5/6, and we follow the addition rules. Okay, now first of all I see that I have a negative and a positive, so with addition rules that tells me I'm supposed to be subtracting these. Now anytime I subtract fractions, I have to make sure that I have common denominators, and right now I don't. So I have to figure out what my common denominator for 9 and 6 are. The easiest one to work with will be 18. Alright, so let's talk about the new numerators here. 9 changes to 18 by multiplying times 2, so negative 8 times 2 is going to be a 16 here. 6 changes into 18 by multiplying times 3, so 5 times 3, 15. Now we can add them, but remember, if we have a negative and a positive, we're actually subtracting. So my numerators, I'm going to say 16 minus 15, that is negative 1. On the bottom, I have 18. And I'm making this a negative because out of these two numerators here, 16 is the biggest. So we take that negative, put it with our new numerator, and we have our answer. Alright, so that is the basics with subtracting here. Let's talk about what happens when we have absolute value getting involved. Basically, order of operations tell us that we have to do grouping symbols first, and that's not just parentheses. Absolute value is included in the grouping symbols. So whenever we see absolute value, we do that first, just like we would with parentheses. So let's look inside our first example here. Inside my absolute value, I have 5 minus 11. So I'm going to keep my absolute values there and follow my subtraction rules. I have 5 minus 11, so it tells me to change my negative to, or my subtraction to a plus sign, and then change the sign of the number behind it. So I have 5 plus negative 11 here. And because the signs are different, the adding rules tell me that I'm actually subtracting. So 11 minus 5, that is 6. And I take the negative from the 11. And now I have the absolute value of negative 6. So if I want to evaluate that, I'm going to recall what we learned from a previous video, and we know that anytime you take the absolute value of a single number inside, that answer will always be positive. So my answer is going to be positive 6 for this first example. Same thing with the second one here. I have negative 10 plus 4. Now I'm adding in this one, so I don't have to worry about following the subtraction rules. I get to just go ahead and follow the addition rules. I have a negative and a positive, so that means I'm going to be subtracting these numbers. So 10 minus 4, that is 6. And over here, my 10 is larger. We're going to take that sign. 6 is negative, and what do you know? We end up basically with the same thing we did the first time. Absolute value of negative 6 is positive 6. Alright, I want you to try this last example right here, so pause your video, try it out, and we'll check our answers in just a few seconds. Alright, again, I got positive 6 for my answer, so I saw that I had subtraction. We're going to change our subtraction sign right here to addition, which is what I did. And then my negative 10, it changed into a positive 10, and because I had different signs, we're actually subtracting those numbers. So 10 minus 4 gives me 6, and 10 is positive, 6 will be positive, and when we take the absolute value, we still have a positive 6. Alright, let's talk a little bit about some evaluation here. We've already talked about evaluation before, but now we're going to throw in some negatives. So this is where it's really important to make sure that you have parentheses for all of your variables. So let's take a look here. I have a minus b plus absolute value of a minus c. So the very first thing I'm going to do is everywhere I see a variable, I'm replacing it with parentheses. And this is just going to help me keep my negative and positive straight so I don't get any kind of confusion happening. Alright, now this first one, this is A, and they tell me that A is 3. Oops. So we're going to plug in a 3. B is supposed to be negative 4, so let me put a negative 4 here. A, 3 again. And then lastly I have a C, and C is negative 5. Alright, let's follow order of operations to figure out what we're supposed to do. Order of operations, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, says to do absolute value first. So inside here I see that I'm subtracting numbers, and that's what this video has been talking about. So we are going to follow those 3 steps. Change subtraction to addition. After we've changed subtraction to addition, we're going to be changing the sign of the second number. So let me do that. My 5 is now positive. And I'm going to go ahead and bring down the rest of this over here. Alright. So now I'm going to do what's inside, and that's pretty easy to see. 3 plus positive 5, that's going to give me an 8. And I can look over here. Now I see that I've got subtraction and addition, so I'm going to be doing it from left to right here. I see that I've got subtraction. I'm going to change that to addition. So I'm going to write 3 plus negative 4. But I have to remember to change the sign of my second number, so my negative 4 becomes positive 4. And now I have 3 plus 4 plus absolute value of 8. So what I've got to do, I've got to keep going with this evaluation of 8. Absolute value of 8 is 8. So we have 3 plus 4 plus 8. And we're going to add this up from left to right. 3 plus 4 is 7. 7 plus 8, 15. Alright, let's get you guys to try one. Take a look at this one. We're going to use the same values for A, B, and C, but I want you to plug them into this sentence right here. So go ahead, pause your video, and then check back. This one had a lot of negatives going every which direction, so we've got to be really careful about what we're doing. So the first thing I did, I started out in the absolute value, and I saw I had a subtraction, so I took my subtraction sign, changed it to addition, and I changed the sign of the second number, so 3 became negative. After that, I just dropped everything else down. For my second step, I said negative 5 plus negative 3. I'm going to add those together. I got negative 8 inside the absolute value, and I dropped everything else down. Now when I evaluate negative 8, that's going to give me positive 8. So I drop down my sign here. And then here, if you'll notice, I have 3 minus negative 5. When we change this to addition and change the sign of the second number, some of you might have already seen this pattern, but when you have two negatives together like this, you're always going to have a positive here. So this turns into a plus sign and positive 5. The same thing would happen here with my negative 4. Both of those negatives are going to sort of cancel each other out and make 4 turn into a positive number, just like it did with 5. So that's a little bit of a shortcut here if you want to use it. And now I have addition, addition, subtraction. Order of operations tells me that I need to do it from left to right, so I go 4 plus 3 is 7, 7 plus 5 is 12, and 12 minus 8 is 4. That will wrap it up for our subtraction video. Make sure that you are asking questions in class, and we will see you there.